Thanks for streaming with us. I'm Brad Edwards. Front and center in the November 8th election, the newly redrawn Illinois 6th Congressional District, which includes Lake and DuPage counties, a big part of Cook County, parts of Chicago, and more. The face-off, who decides to represent it? Current Congressman Sean Casten, a Democrat, versus Orland Park Mayor Keith Pekau, Republican. Joining me now, current Congressman Sean Casten. Congressman, thank you for joining us on the stream. We appreciate it. You actually beat out another sitting Democrat in your primary to get here.
Thanks so much for having me, Brad. We did, and it's unfortunate with Illinois losing a seat thanks to redistricting. There were some awkward combinatorics, but I've basically always run this job on the theory that there's a lot more that unites us than divides us. It doesn't matter whether we're Democrats or Republicans or Whigs or Federalists, we're all Americans. And I've been proud to represent the 6th District for the last 2 terms. I've been proud to, take a district that was Republican for 50 years and flip it in 1972, since 1972, and flip it in 18. Not by telling Republicans that they were bad, but by making sure that we have a vision of America that includes everybody. And I look forward to continuing to serve in that capacity.
So let's get right to it. Abortion is now front and center. Roe was considered settled law. It is now no longer settled law. It is a state issue. This really isn't under your purview as a congressman, but it is topic A. Your stance on abortion, Mr. Congressman.
Well, let's be very clear. This is absolutely under our purview as members of Congress, primarily because the decision in Roe, when Roe was made, said that this is not a states' rights issue, it is a women's rights issue. And since Roe was passed, that has been the understood law of the land. What the Dobbs decision did was reverse the Roe decision and said we're going to take rights away from 50% of the population and grant them to states to do as they wish. If a state thinks that you should be forced to carry a child to term, if you're a 13-year-old incest victim, the state can force you to do that. That's what Dobbs says. We have passed in the House the Women's Health Protection Act, not once but twice, to legislatively provide the protections to all women, to simply say that all women are equal. And if we do that, then we will take the rights away from the courts. We will take the rights away from the states and give them back to the people who rightfully should have them, namely the women of this country.
Duly noted on that. You have outraged your Republican opponent quite handily, especially in third quarter numbers, nearly double his haul, more than $1 million. And an ad by you recently highlighted your opponent's, in your words, your opponent's extreme anti-choice stance on reproductive rights. Go into that.
Well, my opponent has said that he supports and agrees with the Dobbs decision. And now he has claimed that he believes in exceptions for rape and incest. But that actually doesn't make any legal sense if you support the Dobbs decision, because the Dobbs decision did not afford any limitations on what a state may do. And so we've seen 13 states immediately snap trigger laws into effect that immediately took basically all rights away from women. We have seen people around the country being forced to bring child up to term. We've seen, even in Illinois, a state where women's rights are protected, an 800% increase in demand for abortion care in Illinois. An increase in the lag time to procure an abortion in Illinois from 3 days to 3 weeks in some downstate hospitals. So this is hurting everybody. And when my opponent says he supports Dobbs, he is essentially saying that it is acceptable to take rights away from women in all circumstances if some state somewhere in the country wants to do so. And this is not, remember, if the state takes away your rights, those rights are not only taken away from citizens of that state, they are taken away from any woman who happens to be in that state at the time she needs medical care, whether she's in college, maybe she's serving in our armed forces, maybe she's working in a different location. This affects all American women.
Let's go to the economy now. We've got inflation, recession likely on the horizon. Crime is bad. Chicago is scared. All of these things happening under a Democratic watch. What say you on these issues?
Well, look, we're in a political season and there's a tendency to blame everything on whoever your political opponents are. I think we should put as much stock into people blaming the Democrats for things they don't like as we should put into the British blaming the Tories. But let's look at the last 4 years. 2018 was an election about playing defense against an out-of-control president. 2020 was about coming back from not just a global pandemic, not just an insurrection, but the biggest collapse in our economy since the Great Depression. And in the intervening period after that, we passed the biggest injection of money into our economy. In 2021, for the first year ever, at least in my memory, wage growth outpaced inflation growth in the country. People had more money in their pockets at the end of 2021 than they did at the start. And in the course of creating that wage growth, we also, by the way, passed the biggest infrastructure bill in our history, the biggest climate bill in our history. We finally lowered the cost for prescription drugs by letting Medicare negotiate. In the course of doing all that, by putting more money in workers' pockets, by giving workers the ability to negotiate for higher pay, we also put some upward pressure on our economy, particularly in those parts of our economy that depend on labor. The hospitality sector, the elder care sector. And we are seeing those inflationary pressures play out. And given the choice between where the economy was in 2020, massive spiking unemployment, massively collapsing GDP, I would much rather be in the position we're in now. Now, to be fair, we have real challenges. There's real pain in people's pockets, but we need to have people there who are committed to the idea that government works. And a point that I'd make on that is, if you recall, just 2 years ago, every town in Illinois, every town in my district, every town in the country was extremely nervous about their financial situation. They were seeing their sales tax revenues were falling. They weren't able to keep their schools open, weren't able to fund their police departments. We could not get a single Republican member of Congress to vote to provide that support. And when we passed that American Rescue Plan and brought money back into our states and municipalities, we did that on a purely partisan basis. I wish it wasn't partisan to support our local communities. I wish it wasn't partisan to say that we shouldn't defund the FBI. I wish it wasn't partisan to say that when the Capitol Police protected our democracy on January 6th, we should at least have the dignity to meet with them and thank them for their service, or to give them Congressional Medals of Honor, all of which were opposed by the Republican Party. I wish those things weren't partisan, but I am glad that we were able to do it. I'm proud that I was able to play a role in making that happen. And I do take some umbrage at people who claim that the party that opposed funding our police, that opposed supporting our FBI, that opposed thanking our Capitol Police is somehow the party of law and order.
Congressman, if you win, there is a chance you will no longer be in the majority in Congress. There's a chance it could turn. It could be a Republican majority in Congress. If you win, how will you deal with being in the minority? Will you play with the Republicans, or will you take your toys home from the sandbox?
Well, I've had no problem working with Republicans so far, and look, it's such a strange question, because having spent 20 years in the private sector, no one ever asks you in the private sector, were you able to work well with somebody who disagreed with you on a woman's right to choose, or disagreed with you on the right level of tax policy? That would be an insane question in your job, Brad, right? We ask that of politicians, and it's, of course we will, because that's how normal people interact. One of the concerns I have is that, regardless of which party is in the majority next term, we are losing too many good Republicans. My friend Anthony Gonzalez from Ohio is deciding not to run anymore. My good friend Denver Riegelman from the first term, who I came in with, officiated a gay wedding, and that was considered a sin, and so he was primaried and he didn't come back. Fred Upton from Michigan, another good friend, who's not coming back. When we voted on the Electoral Count Act, which was to address some of the acceptance on January 6th, I mean, this was in some ways a very modest bill that said that the vice president's role in counting the votes of the Electoral College was purely ministerial. It slightly raised the number of representatives and senators that are required in order to ensure, to overturn the certified election results of a given state. This should not be a big deal. That bill only got 8 Republicans to vote in favor of it, and every single one of them are retiring. And so this isn't a question of whether or not we can work with Republicans. It's what will the Republican Party look like next term when there will not be a single member there who thinks that we need to make any changes in our government in order to prevent January 6th from happening again. And that's really scary. I do not envy the leadership of the Republican Party's job, because they are going to have to manage a caucus that is becoming extremely radicalized. And, tragically, we've seen in Illinois, you mentioned that I won my primary. Adam Kinzinger was evicted from his party for his patriotism. Rodney Davis, who's a good friend, lost his primary to a woman who was quoting Adolf Hitler on the steps of the Capitol on January 5th. We're losing good people from the Republican Party, and the reward system in the Republican Party in Washington right now does not reward patriotism. It does not reward courage. It rewards the extremists and encourages everybody else to stay silent. And it's not healthy in a two-party democracy to have that reality.
And that will be the final word. Congressman Sean Casten, Democrat, Illinois District 6, running for re-election. Best of luck on Election Day, Congressman.
Thank you, Brad. Pleasure to talk with you.
Mayor Pekau joining us now. Mayor Pekau, thank you for joining us. Part of the newly redrawn district includes where you're the head of now, Orland Park. Advantage, correct?
I believe the biggest number of votes comes out of Orland Park, even though Orland Park is split between 2 congressional districts. So it certainly helps. And the district now obviously comes all the way down here. And again, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get right to it. You, some would say, have had some pretty far right-leaning positions. Aligned yourself in part with Jeannie Ives, who lost in her bid against Governor Rauner for the former gubernatorial nomination. Also lost to Sean Casten, who you're now running against. Are you too right for the district?
Well, I get that all the time, that you're way to the right. I don't believe that I am. I am conservative, but I'm common sense, and I think my leadership in Orland Park has proven that. I work with both sides. I have support from and endorsements from mayors who are Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, because I've worked with them and worked to solve problems for the people, and I think that's what people want.
Duly noted. An interesting point, too, is you kept Orland Park open for business during COVID-19.
We did, and we did it the way you're supposed to do it. We did it with the legislative body voting on it every time and discussing it publicly and taking public votes. And we took the position that we were going to allow businesses and their customers and residents to make their own decisions about what to do and get them as much information as possible so that they could make informed decisions. And we felt certainly with 3,000 different businesses, we could not tell them all what to do and how best to operate their businesses, but to give them as much information so they could determine how to operate them themselves. And it seemed to work very well for Orland Park. We came through it pretty well. A lot of our businesses survived and said they wouldn't have survived if we didn't allow them to stay open. And additionally, we did so with a lower case rate than either the state or the county. So I think we showed that using a common sense approach and giving people good information to let them make their own decisions worked pretty well.
Mr. Mayor, you are pro-life. Roe was obviously overturned, making it now a state issue. So it's really not in your purview. But are you pro-life without exception, vis-a-vis rape, incest, health of the mother? Where is your standing?
Exceptions for, I agree with exceptions for incest, rape, and life of the mother, unlike the commercials that people have seen, millions of dollars of commercials stating otherwise, and that position has been widely known for a long time. And, I'm adopted before Roe v. Wade. I'm also an adopted parent. So I think it's really important that we provide resources so people make adoption their choice, because my parents were not wealthy. We lived in a 750 square foot apartment. They adopted 2 children back over 50 years ago. And today they wouldn't be able to adopt because it's just so expensive. So we have to find a way to make that a more affordable and a better choice for people. And I think if we do that, we'll see more adoptions. It's always better if people make that be a choice as opposed to forcing something upon someone.
Mr. Mayor, if Trump announces he's running for president, Mr. Trump, the former president, said he may announce as soon as after the midterms. If he announces a run for the presidency, will you support him from the get-go?
So I will see who all the candidates are, and I can't obviously answer a hypothetical. I mean, we could have 10, 11, 12 candidates like the last time, who knows? So I will make that decision about when everyone decides to get in the race.
Fact also is crime is a major issue. Again, not necessarily in your purview, but something you deal with now locally and you will have to deal with on a constituent level as a congressman. Crime's an issue. Fact is it up. Fact is crime is up. People are scared. What's your solution?
So as mayor, I have a track record on crime. So we have the lowest index crimes we've had in 27 years since I've been mayor of Orland Park. It's gone down every year because we've been proactive. We support our police, most importantly, and we've put in a number of other proactive policies and procedures that have allowed us to bring crime down. We were named the 8th safest small city in the U.S. in 2021, the safest city in Illinois in 2020. We have the lowest violent crime rate for towns over 50,000 in the state of Illinois for the last 3 years. So, and it's because of that proactive approach, and none of it is beyond common sense. It's just support your police, provide them the resources they need, and be proactive about it, and make sure that you get criminals off the street before they commit another crime.
Orland Park Mayor Keith Pekau, candidate for Congress, District 6, Illinois. Mayor, we thank you for joining us, and good luck on November 8th.
Thank you very much for having me, Brad. I appreciate it.
Again, thanks to the two candidates, Congressman Casten and Mayor Pekau. The 6th Congressional District, just one of many races we're keeping a close eye on right here on the stream. For more interviews with the names you'll be seeing on the ballot come November 8th, stream with us right here on CBS News Chicago. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brad Edwards. Now back to the stream.